Imagine this for a moment. You're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Your body is still, but your mind refuses to stop. Thoughts race endlessly about the mistakes you made, the things you should have said, the opportunities you lost. Then, as your eyes grow heavy, another thought comes. What will happen tomorrow? And just like that, you're trapped again, not in your room, but inside your own mind. You try to rest, but the weight of the past pulls you backward, and the uncertainty of the future drags you forward. And somewhere between those two, the past and the future, the present moment quietly slips away. Now, imagine this. What if all the pain, all the stress, all the noise in your life came from this one simple thing, your inability to live in the now? What if peace wasn't something you had to find, but something that was already here, hidden beneath the endless chatter of your thoughts? This is the truth. Eckhart Tolle discovered a truth that changed not just his life, but the lives of millions who have read The Power of Now. Let me tell you a story. It's 1977 in London. A young man in his late 20s is sitting on the edge of his bed. For years, he's lived with a dark cloud hanging over him, depression, anxiety, and a deep feeling of meaninglessness. Every day feels like a fight against his own thoughts. And on this night, it becomes unbearable. He can't take it anymore. The pain feels endless. The mind won't stop attacking him, and in his despair, he thinks, I can't live with myself anymore. But suddenly, something strange happens. A thought arises, a question that changes everything. Wait, who is this I that can't live with myself? Are there two of me? The one who suffers and the one who watches the suffering? That question stops him cold. For the first time in his life, he becomes aware of a gap, a separation between his thoughts and his true self. And in that instant, something extraordinary happens. The heavy weight of fear and despair collapses. The mental noise that had consumed him for years suddenly disappears. What remains is stillness, deep, silent, endless stillness, a peace so profound that words can't describe it. That young man was Eckhart Tolle. And that night was the beginning of his awakening, the moment when the power of now was born. Before that transformation, Eckhart's life was full of chaos. He was born in Germany in 1948, during a time when the country was still recovering from the devastation of war. His childhood was filled with fear, conflict, and emotional pain. Later, as a young man, he studied at the University of London and then at Cambridge. On the surface, he was intelligent and successful, but inside, he was tormented, constantly trapped in the prison of his thoughts. The more he tried to think his way out of his suffering, the worse it became. Until that one night, the night he realized that he was not the voice in his head. After his awakening, everything changed. For years, he lived in a state of profound peace. People would see him sitting for hours on park benches, simply watching the world, fully present, completely still. At first, they thought he was strange, but slowly, people began to approach him curious about the peace in his eyes. They asked him questions, sought his guidance, and from those quiet conversations, the power of now began to take shape. It wasn't a book born from ambition or theory. It was born from direct experience, from a man who had tasted both the deepest suffering and the highest peace. At its heart, the power of now carries one simple but life-changing truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. The human mind has a strange habit. It never stays still. It lives in two places, the past and the future. The past fills you with regret. The future fills you with fear. And both steal the only thing that is truly real, the present moment. This is what Eckhart calls the great illusion of time. Because the truth is, the past and the future exist only in your mind. They are memories and projections. The only real moment is now. When you truly live in the now, not as an idea, but as an experience, you touch something eternal. You realize that peace was never missing. You were just looking in the wrong place. Have you ever caught yourself lost in thought? You're washing dishes, walking, showering, and suddenly you realize you've been talking to yourself for 10 minutes straight. That voice, the one that never stops, is what Eckhart calls the thinking mind. It comments, judges, compares, remembers, plans. It replays conversations. It argues with imaginary people. And it rarely, if ever, rests. But here's the truth. That voice is not you. You are the one who hears it. You are the silent awareness behind it. The first step to awakening is to recognize this difference, to observe your thoughts without becoming them. When you can watch your mind without judgment, something powerful happens. The mind loses control over you. You begin to experience a sense of freedom, the freedom of being the observer, not the prisoner. That awareness, that silent space within, is your true self. It's what you've been searching for all along. Eckhart Tolle often says, "Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Make the now the primary focus of your life." This is not an idea to believe, it's something to practice. Try it right now. Take a deep breath. Feel the air enter your lungs. Notice the sensations in your body, the feeling of sitting, breathing, existing. If you truly pay attention, you'll notice something. In this very moment, there is no problem. All problems live in the past or the future in thoughts about what has been or what might be. But this moment, right now, is peaceful. It's complete. Nothing is missing. That is the essence of the power of now. Peace is not something you create. It's what remains when you stop living in time. We spend so much of our lives chasing time. We carry the past like a burden, replaying old memories, regrets, and pain. And we project ourselves into the future, worrying about what might happen, what could go wrong, or what we might lose. But here's the truth. Both the past and future are mental constructs. The past exists only as memory. The future exists only as imagination. Neither are real, only the present moment is. This realization is not meant to dismiss your experiences or your plans. It's meant to wake you up to a deeper truth, that your life is unfolding only in this moment. Every moment you've ever lived, every joy, every sorrow, every memory, they all happen now. Life is always now. It always has been. So, let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly present? When was the last time you looked at the sky and didn't name it sky, but simply saw it? When was the last time you listened to someone without waiting for your turn to speak? When was the last time you felt the warmth of the sun without checking your phone or thinking about tomorrow? That right there is the doorway to awakening. It's not a mystical or religious experience. It's simply being here completely, without resistance. And in that space of presence, suffering ends. Because suffering cannot survive in the now. It needs time, it needs a story, and when those dissolve, peace remains. Eckhart calls this awakening a shift in consciousness. You move from being lost in thought to being the witness of thought, from doing to being, from noise to stillness. And that's where real life begins. The invisible enemy, the ego. Let me ask you a question. When someone criticizes you, what happens inside? Do you feel anger rising? Do you immediately start defending yourself, trying to prove that you're right, even if deep down you're not sure? Or maybe when someone else succeeds, there's a tiny sting of envy, a quiet voice that says, "Why not me?" That voice, the one that always compares, defends, judges, and separates, is what Eckhart Tolle calls the ego. Most people think the ego is arrogance, but that's just one side of it. The ego is much more subtle. It's the identity the mind builds out of thoughts, possessions, achievements, and opinions. It says, "This is me. This is who I am." It feeds on being someone. It can't stand being nobody. The ego needs problems to survive. It needs conflict, stories, drama, because those things give it a sense of identity. So it constantly looks for what's wrong with you, with others, with life itself. And that's why you often feel restless, anxious, or defensive, because the ego thrives on discontent. The ego survives through identification. You identify with your job, your name, your looks, your opinions, your story. You might say, "I'm a teacher. I'm successful. I'm a failure. I'm this kind of person." But the truth is, all these are just labels. They're not who you truly are. The moment you believe that your identity depends on any of those things, you give power to the ego, because everything the ego identifies with can be lost. And when it's lost, You suffer. That's why people fall into despair when they lose their career, or their relationship, or their reputation. Because when the ego's foundation collapses, it feels like you are collapsing. But what's actually dying isn't you, it's the illusion of who you thought you were. When the ego dissolves, what remains is presence, the real you, beyond roles and names. Now let's talk about something deeper, something Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body. The pain body is the collection of old emotional pain that lives inside you. It's like an energetic residue of past trauma, sadness, anger, fear that your mind has not fully processed. Every time something painful happened to you and you didn't fully accept it, that pain didn't disappear. It went underground. It became part of the pain body. You can think of it as a sleeping monster that lives inside. Most of the time it's dormant. But when something happens that triggers it, a rejection, a criticism, a loss, it wakes up and takes over. Suddenly, you're not yourself anymore. You react with rage or despair or deep sorrow. You might even know it's irrational, but you can't stop it. That's the pain body feeding. It feeds on negative emotion. It wants drama. It wants conflict. Because every time you react unconsciously, it grows stronger. Have you ever been in an argument where afterward you thought, why did I say that? That wasn't even me. That's because it wasn't you. It was your pain body. The pain body is not just a metaphor. It's a real energetic field that lives in you and interacts with your thoughts. When it awakens, it hijacks your thinking. It pulls you into negative stories. They always treat me this way. I'm never enough. Nobody understands me. These thoughts create emotion, and that emotion fuels more thoughts. It becomes a vicious loop, a storm of pain feeding on itself. The more you identify with it, the more powerful it becomes. But there's a way to stop it, and it doesn't involve fighting. It involves awareness. When you become aware of your pain body, when you notice it rising inside you without judgment, you create space between yourself and it. You stop being the pain. You become the observer. You might feel anger boiling up, but instead of saying, I am angry, you say, there is anger in me. You shift from reacting to witnessing. And in that space, something incredible happens. The pain body loses energy, because pain cannot survive in the light of consciousness. The moment you bring awareness to it, you're no longer feeding it with your thoughts, you're starving it. And eventually, it dissolves not because you fought it, but because you stopped identifying with it. That's how healing happens. Not by resisting pain, but by becoming conscious of it. Have you ever wondered why relationships can be so challenging? Why people who love each other deeply can still hurt each other so much? It's because relationships are one of the pain body's favorite playgrounds. When two people come together, each brings their own pain body full of old wounds, expectations, and emotional triggers. And sooner or later, those pain bodies wake up and start feeding off conflict. One person says something harmless, the other feels attacked. Voices rise, emotions explode. In that moment, it's not two people arguing, it's two pain bodies feeding off each other's energy. The way out of this cycle isn't to blame or to fix the other person. It's to become aware of your own reactions, to recognize when your pain body is active. When you stay conscious, you break the chain. You refuse to feed the cycle of unconsciousness. That's how love deepens, when presence enters the space between two people. Eckhart Tolle's teaching isn't about suppressing thoughts or emotions. It's about observing them without judgment. Next time you feel anger, sadness, or fear, don't rush to escape it. Don't try to label it or fix it. Just notice it. Feel it as energy in your body, as sensations, not stories. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Can I allow this feeling to be here just as it is? That question is powerful because it brings you into the present moment. In that instant of awareness, you stop being the emotion and you become the consciousness that's witnessing it. That's the beginning of freedom. Eckhart often says, whatever you resist persists. Whatever you accept transforms. When you resist the present moment, when you wish it were different, you create inner tension. You say no to life, and that no becomes suffering. But when you accept what is fully, without conditions, a miracle happens. Peace returns. Acceptance doesn't mean you like everything that happens. It means you stop fighting reality. You stop demanding that life be different before you allow yourself to feel peace. When you accept what is, You align yourself with the flow of life itself. You become one with the now. The more you practice presence, the more you realize something astonishing. You don't need constant thought to live. In fact, the most peaceful moments in your life, watching a sunset, listening to the ocean, holding someone's hand, are moments when thinking stops. In those moments, you're not in the past or future. You're simply here. That stillness, that awareness, that's who you truly are. Not the thinker, not the story, not the identity, but the silent presence behind it all. Living consciously means you no longer let your mind run your life. It doesn't mean you stop using your mind. It means you use it when needed and set it down when it's not. You become aware of thoughts as they arise. You notice emotions as they move through you. You stay rooted in the now, no matter what's happening around you. Life still has challenges, but they no longer control you. You respond with awareness instead of reacting out of pain. That's what enlightenment really is. Not floating above life, but being deeply, fully present in it. The art of surrender. Think about the times in your life when you fought reality, when you wanted things to be different than they were. Maybe it was a breakup you couldn't accept. Maybe it was losing a job you thought you needed. Or maybe it was something much smaller, like getting stuck in traffic. When you were already late, that tension you feel in those moments, that resistance, is suffering. It's the mind saying, this shouldn't be happening. But here's the truth Eckhart Tolle reveals so clearly. Suffering doesn't come from the situation itself. It comes from your resistance to it. The event is neutral. What hurts is your reaction to it. It's your mental story about it. The why me, the this is unfair, the this shouldn't happen. When you drop that resistance, when you stop fighting the moment and say, okay, this is what is, something changes. You shift from inner conflict to peace. That's what Eckhart calls surrender. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean passivity. It means fully accepting what's happening right now before taking any action. It's saying yes to life instead of constantly arguing with it. And that yes opens the door to something miraculous. Inner peace, even in the middle of chaos. Most people live as if life is constantly working against them, as if every problem is a personal attack. They're always fighting, resisting, defending, struggling to control every outcome. But when you look deeper, you begin to see that life isn't your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. Every experience, even the painful ones, carries within it a hidden lesson. But you can only see that lesson when you stop resisting. Have you ever noticed that when you finally stop fighting a situation, solutions often appear on their own? That's not coincidence. That's the intelligence of life moving through you once the noise of resistance fades away. Eckhart says, surrender is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to, rather than opposing, the flow of life. When you surrender to what is, you stop swimming upstream. You stop exhausting yourself, and you discover that life flows effortlessly when you no longer resist it. The two levels of acceptance. The first is external acceptance, accepting the situation itself. Maybe you didn't get the job, or the relationship ended, or the plan failed. You accept that this is how it is right now. The second is inner acceptance, accepting your emotions about it. You let yourself feel the sadness, or frustration, or disappointment without judgment. Because real surrender doesn't mean pretending you're okay when you're not. It means allowing yourself to be where you are, with full awareness. When you can sit with your feelings without labeling them as good or bad, they begin to lose their grip on you. They move through you naturally, like clouds passing through the sky. That's true emotional freedom. Not escaping feelings, but being conscious enough to let them come and go. The power of the present moment in action. Surrender and presence are not abstract ideas. They're practices you can live every day. Let's say you're stuck in traffic. Your mind starts complaining. This is ridiculous. I'm wasting my time. I'll be late. You feel irritation rising. But then you remember you can't change the traffic. You can either resist and suffer or accept and be free. So you take a breath. You feel the steering wheel under your hands. You notice the sky, the other cars, the rhythm of your own breathing. And in that instant, you're no longer trapped. You're fully here in the only place life actually happens. Now, that's what presence looks like. It's not about escaping reality. It's about being awake to it. When you start to live in presence, you notice something astonishing. Ordinary moments become extraordinary. The world becomes vivid again. Colors seem brighter. The sound of the wind feels alive. The taste of food is richer. Because you're not half living anymore, you're actually here. You begin to realize that the joy you were searching for in achievements, possessions, or recognition was always hidden in plain sight in the simple act of being. Eckhart writes, "When you are present, you can sense the divine life essence shining through all that exists." And it's true. When you stop living in your head, you start seeing beauty everywhere, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Now let's talk about one of the most important parts of the book, relationships. Because nothing challenges your consciousness more than being in close connection with another human being. Think about it. It's easy to feel peaceful when you're alone in nature. But try staying peaceful when someone criticizes you, misunderstands you, or pushes your buttons. That's where true spiritual practice begins. Eckhart calls relationships spiritual laboratories because they bring your unconscious patterns to the surface. When you're in a relationship, all your hidden pain, your fear of rejection, your need for control, your emotional wounds rise up, not because the other person causes them, but because they trigger what's already inside you. And that's not a curse. That's a gift. It's life showing you what still needs healing. Most relationships in the world are not truly based on love. They're based on dependency. Two people come together not because they are whole, but because they are incomplete. They say, "I need you to make me happy." But as soon as the other person fails to meet that expectation, the pain, body awakens. That's why love so easily turns into anger, jealousy, or disappointment. It's not real love, it's need disguised as love. Real love has no opposite. It doesn't turn into hate when things don't go your way. Real love arises from presence, from the awareness of being. When you are fully present with another person, you stop seeing them through the filters of judgment or expectation. You don't love them for something. You love them as they are. That kind of love is not emotional dependency, it's spiritual connection. In a conscious relationship, the most beautiful thing is not what's said, but the space that exists between two people. It's that quiet stillness, when both are fully present, when neither is trying to change or possess the other. In that space, love grows naturally, effortlessly. You can feel it in the small moments. A look, a silence, a touch. That's not attachment. That's awareness, meeting awareness. That's what Eckhart calls true relationship. Because only two people who are at peace with themselves can create peace together. If you are unconscious, if you're lost in thought, fear, or need, then your relationships will mirror that unconsciousness. But if you are present, your relationships become an extension of that presence. In modern life, we glorify doing. We think that being busy equals being valuable. We fill every moment with activity. Working, scrolling, planning, achieving, terrified of stillness. But Eckhart reminds us that true fulfillment doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being more. That doesn't mean you stop acting. It means your actions arise from presence, not from ego or fear. When you act from presence, even simple things, washing dishes, walking, speaking to someone, carry a quiet power. You're not lost in thought while doing them. You're fully engaged, and because your attention is undivided, your actions become more effective, more graceful, more alive. Presence transforms ordinary living into meditation. When you live in the now, suffering no longer defines you. It becomes your teacher. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" And slowly, pain stops feeling like punishment. It becomes purification. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every failure becomes a doorway into deeper awareness. Eckhart often says, life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. That means even your struggles are sacred. They are not mistakes, they are invitations to wake up. And when you see them that way, even suffering loses its sting. Because you realize it's not there to destroy you, it's there to free you. As your awareness deepens, something beautiful happens. You begin to sense a stillness behind everything. You might be walking down a busy street, surrounded by noise, yet inside, there's a quiet that doesn't move. That quiet is not separate from life. It's the essence of life itself. It's what you truly are: consciousness, presence, awareness. Once you recognize that this stillness is your true nature, the chaos of the world loses its power over you. The noise of the mind becomes background music. The storms of emotion come and go, but you remain unmoved. That's freedom. Not freedom from life, but freedom in life. The illusion of self. Let's begin with a question most people never truly ask. Who are you? Not your name, not your job, not your roles, parent, friend, artist, student, not even your personality or your story. When all that fades, when you strip away everything that can be taken from you, what remains? That silence, that awareness that's noticing these words right now, that's you. But most people never live from that place. They live inside a mental image, a story about who they think they are. That story is what Eckhart calls the egoic self, a mental construct built from memories, experiences, and beliefs. The problem isn't having a story. The problem is believing you are the story. Because when your sense of self depends on things outside you, on success, on recognition, on approval, you'll always be anxious. You'll always fear loss. That's why people are so easily hurt. When someone criticizes you, it's not your true self that feels pain, it's the egoic image that's being threatened. But here's the truth. Your true self-consciousness itself cannot be hurt. It has no shape, no form, no boundaries. It's like space, vast, open, untouched. When you awaken to that realization, you discover a peace that the world can't give and can never take away. The shift from form to formlessness. Everything in life has form. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances, all of these are forms. But all forms are temporary. They arise, they change, they fade. The mistake the human mind makes is this. It tries to find permanence in what is temporary. It looks for security in things that are destined to change: relationships, achievements, possessions, identities. No wonder we suffer. Because we're trying to hold on to what's meant to pass. Eckhart Tolle says, form is temporary. Form is limitation, but within every form lies the formless, the essence of life itself. When you look beyond the surface, beyond appearances, you begin to sense something invisible that underlies all things, a silent presence that animates everything. That's what Eckhart calls being. You can't see being. You can't touch it, but you can feel it in the stillness between thoughts, in the breath, in the quiet awareness that watches life unfold. You are that awareness. That's the formless within the form. That's the eternal within the temporary. One of the most profound ideas in The Power of Now is that time is an illusion. Think about it when you say, my life. What do you really mean? You're referring to a series of memories, the past, and a collection of expectations, the future. But both exist only in your mind. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. And yet, most people live entirely in those two unreal dimensions. They carry the weight of what has been and the anxiety of what might be, and in doing so, they miss the only thing that actually exists. Now, time, Eckhart says, is useful for practical purposes, for appointments, schedules, plans. But psychological time, the habit of living mentally in the past or future, is a trap because it keeps you from living in the only place life ever happens, the present moment. Awakening isn't something you achieve. It's what happens when you stop identifying with the ego, the mind-made self that lives in time. The ego says, I need to become something. It's always on a journey, always reaching, never arriving. But true awakening happens when you realize there's nothing to become, because what you've been searching for has always been here. That realization feels like a kind of death, the death of the ego. And the ego fears that death more than anything. That's why it resists stillness. That's why it needs constant thought, noise, distraction, because silence threatens its existence. But when you face that silence and don't run, something beautiful happens. The old identity dissolves. The false self fades. And in that space, what remains is pure awareness, a presence so alive, so vast, that it fills you with a peace beyond understanding. It's as if the wave remembers it's part of the ocean. Eckhart reminds us again and again, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. Your mind was meant to be a tool, a powerful instrument for creation, analysis, and learning. But somewhere along the way, it became the ruler of your life. It constantly demands attention, telling stories, making judgments, planning, comparing. The mind lives in time, but awareness lives in eternity. The more you identify with your thoughts, the more you suffer. The more you rest in awareness, the freer you become. Try this simple observation. When a thought arises, notice it but don't follow it. Watch it appear and disappear, like a cloud drifting through the sky. You'll realize something incredible. Thoughts come and go, but you remain. That you is not the thinker, it's the silent witness. That witness is consciousness itself, the essence of who you are. Every once in a while, you experience a gap, a moment of stillness between two thoughts. It might be so brief you barely notice it. But in that gap, there is no past, no future, no problem. There is only awareness, pure, unconditioned presence. That's where peace lives. Not in changing your thoughts, but in resting in the space between them. Eckhart says, when you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. The more you rest in that gap, the more you allow stillness to expand, the more the noise of the mind begins to fade, and slowly, your identity shifts from the thinker to the observer, from the form to the formless. That's awakening. When you awaken, you don't see a different world. You see the same world, but with different eyes. The ordinary becomes sacred. The mundane becomes miraculous. You no longer look at a tree and think, that's just a tree. You feel its aliveness, the same aliveness that's within you. You sense the presence that connects all things. It's as if the veil of thought has lifted, and for the first time, you see reality as it truly is, radiant, alive, timeless. That's what Eckhart means when he says, to awaken is to see the oneness of all life. The ego is always seeking. It's always chasing something: success, love, happiness, enlightenment. It's always saying, when I get there, I'll be fulfilled. But when you truly awaken, that seeking ends, because you realize there is no there. There is only here. The peace you were chasing in the future is already present in this moment. The love you were searching for is already within you. You stop being a seeker and become a finder, not because you found something new, but because you finally stopped running. That's the quiet paradox of enlightenment. You don't become more. You become less. Less identified, less burdened, less separate. And in that less, you find everything. Once you begin to live as awareness, silence becomes your teacher. You start to notice that there's a quiet intelligence guiding life, something deeper than the thinking mind. You begin to trust it. Decisions become easier, not because you analyze more, but because you listen more, not to thought, but to presence. There's a clarity that arises when the noise of the mind fades. You don't have to force it. It happens naturally as you rest in stillness. This is what Eckhart means when he says, stillness is the language God speaks. Everything else is a bad translation. As your awareness deepens, your relationship with life transforms. You stop reacting. You stop trying to control everything. You realize that life unfolds by itself, effortlessly, just like your breath. You begin to move with it, not against it. This is what it means to live as consciousness, to be fully in the world, yet untouched by it. To play your roles as a parent, a worker, a friend, without losing yourself in them. To act with love and clarity, but without attachment to results. Life becomes a dance between form and formlessness, between doing and being. And the more you rest in being, the more your doing becomes infused with peace, purpose, and power. At the deepest level of realization, even death loses its meaning. Because if you are not your body, not your mind, not your story, then what can truly die? Forms come and go, but consciousness remains. It was here before your birth and will be here after your death. When you know yourself as that, as awareness itself, the fear of death dissolves, because you realize the one who fears death was never real to begin with. Eckhart says, death is not the opposite of life. Life has no opposite. The opposite of death is birth. Life is eternal. When you touch that truth, even for a moment, you experience freedom. You understand that you are not in the universe. You are the universe, expressing itself for a while through this form. Presence is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a practice, a continual returning to now. The mind will pull you away 1,000 times a day, and 1,000 times you'll gently return. Each time you do, you grow more rooted in the truth of who you are. Slowly, presence becomes your natural state. You don't have to try to be present, you simply are. And that's when life begins to feel effortless. Even challenges become sacred because they remind you to return home to this moment. That's the power of now. It's not about adding something new to your life. It's about uncovering what has been there all along, your true self. Living is the now. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, not rushing into thought, not checking your phone, not replaying yesterday's worries, but simply opening your eyes and being here. You feel your breath. You sense the stillness of the room. You realize this moment is enough. You're not thinking about what's next or what's missing. You're simply present. And for the first time, you feel alive. That's what it means to live as the now. It's not something mystical or distant. It's the most natural state you can be in, and yet the rarest. Because most people aren't living life. They're thinking about life. They're caught in stories of who they should be, what they should achieve, where they should go. But when you live as the now, you break free from that illusion. You stop being a prisoner of time and become a participant in life's unfolding. You don't just exist, you experience. When presence becomes your way of being, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Nothing is ordinary anymore. A simple walk outside feels sacred. The sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of food, they're no longer background details. They're alive, vibrant, complete. You stop chasing the extraordinary because you realize life itself is extraordinary. It always was. You just weren't here to see it. Eckhart says, the miracle is not walking on water. The miracle is walking on the earth, fully conscious of it. When you live in the now, even washing dishes, holding a cup, or hearing the rain becomes an act of grace. Because presence turns the mundane into the miraculous. But awakening doesn't mean the ego disappears forever. It tries to return quietly, subtly, through thought, emotion, or habit. It might say, you're enlightened now. You're more spiritual than others. You shouldn't feel anger or sadness anymore. That's the ego's final disguise, spiritual pride. It turns awakening into another identity, another story. Eckhart calls this the ego in sheep's clothing, and it's one of the last traps on the path of consciousness. The moment you believe you've arrived, the ego is back. The key isn't to fight it, it's to stay aware, to notice it, to smile at it. Because even awareness of ego is presence. As Eckhart says, if you think you are enlightened, spend a week with your family. That's not sarcasm, it's wisdom. Life will always show you where you still hold resistance, where unconsciousness still hides. And that's the beauty of it. Every trigger, every irritation, every challenge, it's all part of your awakening. Spiritual practice in daily life. For many, spirituality sounds like something separate from life, something to be done in meditation or silence. But the power of now teaches that the real spiritual practice begins in the everyday moments. It's when you're waiting in line, or listening to someone speak, or driving home from work. Can you stay present in those moments? Can you feel your inner body while the world moves around you? Can you remain aware even when things don't go your way? That's where your power lies, not in escaping life, but in embracing it with full consciousness. Because when you bring awareness into ordinary situations, life itself becomes your teacher. Eckhart often speaks of something called the inner body, a simple yet powerful way to stay rooted in the now. He says, direct your attention into the body. Feel it from within. Feel the life energy that animates it. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel the aliveness inside your hands? The tingling in your chest? The energy pulsing within your body? That's presence consciousness felt directly as life itself. When you connect with that aliveness, your attention moves away from thought and into being. You become grounded, silent, alert. This practice isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about entering it more deeply, more consciously, more awake. The power of stillness. Most people are uncomfortable with stillness. They equate it with boredom or laziness or emptiness. So they fill every second with noise, music, screens, conversations, distractions. But stillness is not emptiness. It's fullness, the fullness of life, unfiltered by thought. When you stop running from stillness, you discover that it's not a void. It's where peace, creativity, and intuition live. Every artist, Every genius, every great thinker has touched this state, that space where ideas arise effortlessly, because stillness is the source of all creation. Eckhart writes, "All true creativity comes out of inner stillness. When your mind is quiet, inspiration flows naturally, not as effort, but as expression. There comes a point when you stop asking, 'How can I be happy?' Because you realize happiness was never meant to be chased. It arises naturally when you stop resisting life. This joy isn't excitement or euphoria. Those are temporary states. The joy of being is calm, subtle, and constant. It's the feeling of being at home wherever you are. It's the quiet contentment of existing without needing anything to be different. You feel it in small, unexplainable moments, looking at the sky, breathing deeply, doing absolutely nothing, and realizing you don't need a reason to be at peace. That's true joy. It doesn't depend on circumstance. It's not something you have. It's what you are. If you ever want to remember what presence feels like, just spend time in nature. Watch a tree. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't compare itself to the tree next to it. It doesn't say, "I should be taller, greener, stronger." It simply is. A flower blooms, then fades. The wind blows, then stills. The river flows endlessly, never clinging to where it's been or where it's going. Everything in nature is deeply at peace with what is. That's why being in nature feels healing, because it mirrors the truth of your own being. It shows you how to return to what you've always known but forgotten, the peace of presence. As you awaken, compassion naturally arises. You see others not as separate, but as expressions of the same consciousness. You realize that behind every person's fear, anger, or ego, there's the same awareness that lives within you. You no longer judge as quickly. You understand that unconsciousness in others is not evil, it's just pain. That realization doesn't make you superior. It makes you humble, kind, forgiving, because you see that everyone is walking the same path, just at different points along the journey. Eckhart says, "When you look at another human being and sense the being behind the outer form, you have become conscious of oneness." That's the beginning of true compassion, seeing through the illusion of separation. When enough individuals awaken, the world itself begins to change. Because the outer world is a reflection of our inner state. Wars, greed, pollution, division, they're all manifestations of human unconsciousness. But when people begin to live consciously, when they act from awareness instead of fear, the energy of the planet shifts. You don't need to change the whole world. You only need to awaken yourself, because consciousness is contagious. Your peace affects others more than your opinions ever could. Your stillness brings calm to chaotic rooms. Your presence becomes a silent blessing to those around you. That's how real change begins, from within. The end of suffering. Suffering doesn't end when life becomes perfect. It ends when you stop identifying with the one who suffers. You may still experience pain, physical, emotional, situational, but it no longer defines you. You see it as passing weather in the vast sky of your being. You begin to understand that every difficulty is a doorway into greater awareness. And you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, you ask, "What is this teaching me about presence?" Suffering becomes your greatest teacher, not because you seek it, but because you no longer run from it. You meet it fully, consciously, compassionately. And in doing so, it transforms into peace. That's liberation, freedom, not from pain, but from bondage to pain. The deepest truth. At the end of the journey, there's no grand revelation, no light from the sky, no fireworks of enlightenment. There's only silence, stillness, presence. And in that stillness, you realize something simple yet profound. There was never a journey at all. The one who was searching was the one being searched for. The one seeking peace was peace itself. The one trying to wake up was already awake. You laugh, maybe cry, because you see how simple it's always been. How everything you've ever needed was right here in the now. Eckhart Tolle ends The Power of Now with a truth that's both humbling and liberating. You are the now. You are the presence, the awareness, the life beneath all life. Nothing real has ever been lost, and nothing unreal ever existed. This is the essence of awakening, to realize that life is not something happening to you, but something happening through you. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean expressing itself as a drop for a little while. And once you see that, once you truly feel it, everything changes. Fear dissolves. Striving ends. And what remains is peace. A peace that has no opposite. A joy that cannot be taken away. A love that doesn't come or go. Because it's not something you have, it's what you are. Because in the end, life isn't something to figure out, it's something to be. And when you finally stop running, stop chasing, stop seeking, you discover the greatest truth of all. You were never separate from peace. You were peace itself.